Hi, my name is Drew Ignatowski.
I'm Ian Overton.
I'm Cece Sandoval.
I'm Audrey Young.
Hi, I'm Alex Goranson.
And I'd like today to start with just an imagination exercise. So imagine you wake up one morning, get out of bed, and you realize you don't know where you are. And to calm yourself, you go downstairs and think, I'll have a cup of coffee. But there's a stranger standing in your kitchen. And in that kitchen, you hear your mother's voice singing through the garden window. But then you remember she's been dead for 20 years. This is what life is like, living with someone with dementia and Alzheimer's. Today, I'd love to guide us through this talked about but still relatively unknown family disease. I'll be referencing sources from the CDC, the Alzheimer's Association, and the National Institute of Health and Aging. The poet Ellen Miller once called Alzheimer's the long goodbye. That's because the CDC defines Alzheimer's as a brain disease that causes damage and degeneration to the nerve cells in the brain. It's a progressive disease that affects memory, thinking, and behavior. In my speech today, I'll be talking about what are the causes of Alzheimer's, who in the population is affected, and the signs and symptoms, as well as how we as the public manage and treat this heartfelt disease. But first, let's separate dementia from Alzheimer's. The Alzheimer's Association defines dementia as an umbrella term for the loss of memory, thinking, and other abilities. That is because we talk about Alzheimer's because it affects 60 to 80% of the population of people with dementia. And it's distinct in that it deals with neurocellular death. I'm going to show you this image right here. An article by Stanford Medicine really breaks down how this disease affects the body. So here we have a normal neuron in the brain, a neural cell, with its axons. So this neuron is going to build up over time a protein called beta amyloid. And these axon tails have a structure called tau. When we go to sleep, our glial cells clean up this excess protein called beta amyloid. Now, in a person with Alzheimer's, that protein builds up and builds up over time. It forms a plaque, and the cell dies, and the neurons become tangled. And you'll notice this brain is slightly smaller. I want to show you a more stark image. These are two brains. This is the brain of someone who's normal and healthy. This is the brain of someone who has been affected by Alzheimer's. That's because Alzheimer's literally shrinks the brain. Now that we've talked about some of the physiology, I'm going to discuss the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. Hint, it has to do with age and some pretty harsh statistics. The Mayo Clinic and the National Institute of Health say that 55 million people globally are affected with Alzheimer's, 7 million of which are American. It is the sixth leading cause of death in the US, and it typically affects people 65 and older, most of which are women. The three main factors linking Alzheimer's to the disease are age, genetic history, and family. The Mayo Clinic breaks down a couple points for what to expect with signs and symptoms. We have effects in memory, and that could be as simple as misplacing your keys, or it could be forgetting the name of a loved one. It affects thinking and cognitive ability, so that could be dealing with a traffic light. That could be dealing with numbers. Imagine going to pay for groceries and just not knowing the numbers that are coming up on the screen. It deals with your day-to-day activities and can even be affected by changes in behavior, mood, or social isolation. But these are just some of the statistics around Alzheimer's and how it affects the population, the signs and symptoms. I want to go into what we're doing to treat this disease. Well, currently, there is no known cure for Alzheimer's, but with our current treatments available, we can slow the progression of the disease. On the drug front, it's twofold. We deal with the National Institute of Health, which discusses the FDA has approved two drugs. One is for a cholesterol inhibitor called donepezil. That just slows behavioral and cognitive decline in mild to moderate cases. We also have a new immunotherapy drug, lecanemab, which deals directly with cleaning up some of that beta amyloid plaque. But the primary care for someone with Alzheimer's is going to be palliative care. That is going to be the removal of pain. It's providing comfort. It's quality of life. It's keeping someone in their day-to-day routine. This could be the job of a professional nurse or a loved one. The challenge of a caregiver is that you must have endurance of compassion and understanding during this long goodbye. So to briefly summarize, I've talked about the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, how it affects the brain neurologically, who's at risk in the population, what might be some of the signs and symptoms, and our modern forms of treatment that are available. Globally, as a tribe, we're living longer, and it's good to be informed by this progressive disease. It is bittersweet, but it can be managed with compassion and heart-centered care. I'd love to leave my speech today with a beautiful quote by a Norwegian writer, Arngeborg, who wrote this passage dealing with a family grieving over the loss of a loved one with dementia. To love a person is to learn the song in their heart and to sing it back to them when they've forgotten. Alzheimer's is not going away, but it can be faced, and it can be faced each day with compassion and heart-centered care. Thank you.